Hey, I'm testing the mic. هل تسمعوني اوكي ولا؟ Mic test, mic test. Okay, we are live. Welcome everyone. Today is going to be awesome. Today is going to be all about game development, game systems, system design. My name is Fahad Khalifa, also known as Felta, and this is Extreme Game Dev. Welcome everyone. العدد اوكي يعني نقدر نبتدي. ف yeah, let's start. So the schedule for this week, today we have Guide to System Design by myself, and on Monday we have Level Design and Animation by Haytham, and Tuesday Ahmed will be joining us for Environment Art. Yeah, this is the schedule for this week. The contents of this presentation or this live stream. First, we're going to talk about systems design. Then we're going to talk about something new called systemic games. An example, I'll talk about an example of systemic games. And then what makes a game enjoyable. And then at the end, I'll talk about the update we have for Project Z. Yeah, so this is the content of today. So just like any of my live streams, we have a contest, and whenever you see this golden exclamation mark, I'm going to ask a question, and there will be a reward at the end when we round up all of the results. So it's going to be a $50 credit for any of the platforms. You can choose, the winner can choose basically from which platform they need. So this is the reward for the contest, and the questions are easy, I think, and we have a question that's, if there's any sudden death. So yeah, this is the contest for today. So are you guys ready? Let's go. What is a system? So a system in game design or system design is usually is misinterpreted into something else. Some people would say a system would be like the device of the platform or the console, Game Boy, Sega, PlayStation. لا, a system in a game is not a device. It is نظام, where I'm going to explain. So basically, a definition of a system, it's a group of systems that takes in inputs and results in an output. So input, and then the system itself would evaluate the input that you entered, and then it would give you an output. So this is in simple terms what a game system resembles. So this is like a definition of a system or a game system. So let's say, for example, input, evaluation, and then the output. So let's talk about, for example, a combat system in a game. The combat in القتال أو في اللعبة. So what's the input? The input is your health, the player health, the strength of the player, and the defense. So this is the input into the system. The system will evaluate your input and then will give you an output. So the output would be like, okay, so if I get hit, I get lower health. Or مثلا my health is lowered to the point till I die. So this is a simple example of how a system would have an input and then an output. Let's do another example. So imagine there's a light switch and there's a light. So the input would be the light switch, and then the system would evaluate the switch and then would have an output. So we talked about in the system there is a group of systems that has inputs and then would eventually have an output, which will eventually light up the light bulb. So this is another example of explaining what a system is. So let's ask our first question for today. Is everyone ready? So the first question for today is, Ahmed Bastigi and Fahd Al-Majid are working on a game called Project X. Does anyone know what's the theme of the game? And there's a clue on this slide that might show what the theme is. So yeah, I'll wait for your answers. I might be getting lag, by the way, but what's the theme of the game that Ahmed Al-Bastigi and Fahd Al-Majid are working on, Project X? The theme of the game. Okay, so we have a winner. I think this is Lucy 187. Yeah, that's the right answer. So I'm gonna move on just to avoid any lag. Yeah, it is steampunk is the theme for their next project, Project X. Yeah, moving on. System examples. So we talked about systems. Let's talk about examples in a game. So, for example, a combat system. How would the player, attack another enemy, or how will the enemy react to a player? The system as a whole, designing it has its own system basically. The enemy system, we talked about it in combat. It has its own AI, for example. Or لا مثلا it's just patrolling or idle. An enemy system. Crafting. Crafting is always an awesome feature or system in a game where you can, for example, cooking, or you can craft weapons, craft armor. So that system is also part of a game system design. Weather system, for example, Zelda Breath of the Wild has an awesome weather system that affects or influences the other systems. Chemistry. So I was saying chemistry. Chemistry is the chemistry system. Usually it's used in RPG games where, for example, fire is greater than life, and water or ice can win over fire. So chemistry system usually is one of the systems used in games. usually in RPG games. Quest design or quest system. Um, like how do you want the quests to be? Linear quests or يعني, you can have a quest log, for example, of quests. What do you get when you finish a quest? What's the point of a quest? So that's this the quest system, and yeah, obviously the player system. The player how does he have a health bar? Does he have lives? Does he is it a third person, first person? So that system as a whole is important. So let's ask our next question. And this question is more for the people that are يعني, reading up on the news in game development or in games in general. So this question is, what is the latest handheld game device that's just got announced a while back, maybe a few weeks ago or last week, I'm not sure. What's the latest handheld device that will be coming out in December this year? What's the name of that device? Okay, I'm moving on. I think Tsu got it, so give Tsu a point. It's the new Steam Deck by Steam. You guys should follow the news more. Anyways, let's move on. So, what is a systemic game? This term is a new term, and يعني it's I'll explain more what this is systemic game. But this term is usually used now in the more modern games اللي قاعد يطلعون الحين, the recent games, games that are systemic. So what is systemic game? Systemic games are when all systems can influence one another. So remember the systems that we talked about earlier in the last slide, the weather system, the player system, the quest system, they all influence each other. Zelda Breath of the Wild is a very good example. For example, if it's raining in the game in Zelda and you use a fire arrow, the fire arrow is not it's extinguished. It's not. It becomes a normal arrow because of the rain. NPCs in the world, if it's raining, they will move to the shaded area to avoid the rain. So yeah, this is what systemic games, and I'll talk about an example next. Systemic games also اللي زين فيه, and what's so good about it is and it will generate emergent gameplay. Emergent gameplay created by the player. These systems are designed by the developers, but because they are so systemic, the player, when he plays, he can figure out new ways to play the game where the developers didn't intend to for it to happen. Usually they see it in the community forums or in Twitch. They see other players doing new stuff and they call it emergent gameplay, just because of the systemic, let's say, design. So systemic gameplay example. So imagine me playing this RPG game that has a systemic design, and I encounter this, enemy, and at the same time I encounter another hostile creature in the world, and then I'm thinking, okay, so what shall I do now? Shall I attack the enemy on the right? Maybe the tiger will attack me as well, and I won't survive. Or shall I go to the creature or the tiger? Shall I attack him first, and then I would get maybe attacked by the guard or something? So what should I do? It's very usually in normal games it's just normal attack and then you get attacked. But imagine if you're in a systemic game design, you think of other ideas. Maybe you can throw bait in front of the guard, and then he would get attacked by the tiger, and then they're busy. So the tiger would attack the guard for you. So that's what systemic design would do. It would utilize or have let's say, the enemy system and the NPC or creature system. They influence each other, and you as a player can figure this out. The developer might have not intended it to be this way, but this is an emergent gameplay that occurred because of the system or systemic design. So this is one example. Let's move on to the next topic, which is it's kind of a long topic, but it's fun, and it's very important for game developers. What makes a game enjoyable, and what makes a player come back and play the game because of what? Because of the art? Because of what would the player need for him to play the game again and again and again? So, what are the good things? Novelty, creativity, and evolution. I'll talk about each one separately in the next slide, but let's say what are the bad things that would make a game bad and not enjoyable. Basically, staleness, inhibition, and stagnation. So I'll talk about also all of these together, and hopefully we can understand how a game would be enjoyable. So novelty. What's the meaning of novelty? What would let the player want to come back and play? So the first thing is branching paths. So it's not a linear game where you would have more than one option to do, like side quests. Um, they have, مثلا, for example, if it's a 2D game, you would find another way to finish a level. So a branching, let's say, path for the player to take will make it more fun. Next time he'll be like, oh, if I finish this level now, I'll finish it again with another path. That would make him come back and play the game. A second thing would be multiple playable character styles. So, if, for example, if you played the game as a healer, next time you'd be like, no, I want to change. I don't want to be a healer. I'll play a tank. So yeah, it's if you give the player options in the beginning to play, then he'd say I can play the game again, but playing a different class. Another novelty feature would be procedural generation, which is a new thing, appeared a few years ago, which is levels that are generated procedurally. This is from Minecraft. Whenever you generate a map, you get a different map every single time. So it's not like the same level every single time. You would, as a player, you would memorize it. But if you have a procedural a generated map, then it would make you come back and play again and again. So this is the novelty of a game that would make it enjoyable. So the first question, or not the first question, but the third question is the map on the top. There is a clue in the map, but what's the map? Where is the map from? From which game? It's an RPG, obviously. So just tell me what's the answer for what's the game called of the map on the top of the screen. So yeah, JMO got it. Congrats. It is Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Yeah, so let's move on to the next point, which is يعني the opposite of the novelty is staleness. So, for example, remember this old game, the Aladdin? Um, it's a very linear path. يعني if you play this level, you would memorize it and you would play it once and then خلاص, you wouldn't play it again. So this is the kind of thing that would let players not play a game again and again. Because if you know how to play the level, because it's linear and there's no branching paths, then that's why you wouldn't play it again. Another reason, you would get rigid playable character development. يعني in Final Fantasy 13, the player progression and how you would develop your character is very limited. يعني you can't use يعني you can't be unique. Everyone would play the same progression, and you wouldn't feel like you want to do it again because you did it once. But if there are other ways to specialize your character in different ways, then you would play it again. Linear narratives, same thing with the story or dialogue from in games, usually in RPG games. If you don't give the player the option to yeah, so if you wouldn't give the player options to do narrative, let's say dialogue, for example, if you talk to an NPC and he gives you options to what to say or what to reply, if the replies will not affect the result or outcome, then it's the same outcome every single time. There is no, let's say, options for the player. Yeah, this would lead us to the fourth question. For the people that like RPG games, this is a sci-fi RPG game, very famous. I think developed by BioWare. I gave you not enough tips, but what is the name of the game and the bottom of the screen? Yeah, what's the name of the game? Yeah, so JMO got it. It is Mass Effect. Um, yeah, it's a cool RPG sci-fi game. Moving on to the next good thing, which is creativity. Creativity would lead to replayability. So, what is creativity? For example, there would be an open world. Um, the players nowadays, they like to play in an open world. Most of the franchises, they did their own version of an open world. يعني even Need for Speed for example made an open world. يعني مو بشرط ان هي لعبة زينة بس ان the idea of an open world game uh, is lets the player basically come back and discover new areas that he didn't discover in an open world. Next would be simulation games. Simulation would give the player the freedom to build or create something in the simulation game that will be unique to him. For example, in SimCity, you would build your own city. Uh, you would build housing, you would build commercial buildings, industrial buildings, and basically it will be unique to you, and it will give the player freedom to play the game the way he wants to play it. So this would let the player come back again and do different, um, let's say, versions of his playstyle. Another one would be a sandbox, which is kind of relatively new in the game industry, which is similar to Minecraft, where it's similar to open world. Yani sandbox and open world is the same kind of, but sandbox is even more gives the player even more freedom to create things, to create weapons, to create even his own house. He would feel like he has to survive in this world. Um, so a sandbox uh, basically also gives the player the need or the urge to play again and again. So yeah, the next question is the in Legend of Zelda, the game. What's the name of the kingdom, the main kingdom of the game? There's a kingdom that if you've played Zelda, you would know what's the name of the kingdom. Yeah, so Jabo got it, mashallah alayh. It is Hyrule. Um, I guess he's prepared. Let's move on. So what's the opposite of the, let's say, creativity feature? Is inhibition. Yani, when you limit the player on what to do in a game. يعني you force him not to do things the way he wants to play it. For example, in an open world, يعني it's not an open world. يعني it might be an open world, but there's nothing in the world. There's nothing for him to do. There's this game called Wild West Online. If you've played it or you've heard about it, it's a huge world, but there's nothing to do in it. A linear quest line, you move from one place to the next, and there's nothing you can do in the game. I think about it, the quests are يعني, very limited, and all you do is just يعني, fight each other, and it got a very, very, very low rating. So this is the way when you say it's an open world, لا, make sure you have content in it, not just trees, lakes. لا, يعني you need to have content in the world. Another example of a bad simulation game, Farming Simulator. One of the reviews I read was you'd يعني, have more fun farming in real life than playing the game. So Farming Simulator is يعني, had very bad graphics. It just didn't يعني, meet the standard of a real good simulator. A sandbox, bad sandboxes. When you copy another game and expect it to be a تقليد, it's not the real thing. And if people wanted to play Minecraft, you'd play Minecraft. You wouldn't want to play a copy game. And this game was released on Nintendo Switch, Cube Life Island Survival. It had a mix of pixel art and a mix of high definition art. يعني it was a mess. And يعني most of the time, 100% of the time, if you get a game that that is copied from an original game, then you expect it to be very bad. So the next good thing about good games that makes the player replay or enjoy a game is evolution. What do I mean by evolution? I mean, for example, high scores and leaderboards. يعني if you get a score today, you would want to get the highest score in the leaderboard. So you would show off to your friends. Obviously, this is the game of from Candy Crush. Everyone knows it. Usually, you'd want to hit the highest score, so you would show off to your friends. This is how you would come back and play the game. You would develop your skills in the game. So the developer would provide the leaderboard and the score system, and the player would come back and play and get a high score. Another example would be the difficulty and ranking systems. So, for example, if you play the game in easy mode, how about you go into a little bit harder mode and see if you can finish it that way. Giving player difficulty options will most likely get the player to come back and play it again. A ranking system, for example, you start off a very low rank and then you develop yourself into getting a higher rank. That would get competitive players come back and want to be the best in the game. Another example of evolution would be community challenges. يعني this appeared recently, or يعني relatively recent, with Twitch. يعني for example, the community playing a game, they would make their own challenges and stream it on Twitch. For example, if you play Counter-Strike, they make a map, they start a game that wouldn't have any weapons, ranged weapons like rifle, pistol. They would have only knives. So that would be a challenge. You know, you'd play in a map that has its own, let's say, a challenge created by the community. So community challenges 100% would let other players come back and play the game. So this is how the game would evolve to a better game if you give these features in a game. Um, the next question, which is an easy question for any mobile game gamer, and I give a huge tip. The symbols and the ranking system, the shields, the bronze, the silver, the gold. These ranks are from which famous mobile game? Okay, I'll continue because it's, I'm surprised that no one got it. But yeah, it's from Clash of Clans. Um, it's a competitive PvP game, so that's why not maybe not a lot of people from extreme game dev would are PvPers. Anyways, so the opposite of evolution would be stagnation. Yani, just boring stuff. So heavy RNG. The people that like to play Japanese RPG or JRPG usually would they would play games that have randomly generated combat in the game. But if you have overly used randomly generated combat, it would eventually let the player feel like, oh, another battle, another battle. And having it balanced is very important. So not just randomly generated every 5 seconds you enter battle, making it at least every, let's say, 2 to 3 minutes of gameplay, and then you would have a randomly generated battle that would let the player feel like he's exploring the world, not just going from battle to battle. That would usually let the players just stop playing. Um, dominant gameplay. Dominant gameplay المقصود أو what I mean by it is if a game is not balanced, where you have, for example, an overpowered weapon, um, and the other weapons are just not as good as the overpowered weapon, for example, the sniper gun, um, then you would usually just use the sniper gun وخلاص. You're limiting the player to play one style because he wants to just be the best. But if you balance it out, where you have the sniper gun to be slower than a rifle or a machine gun, uh, and you would balance the weapon system in the game, then you would let the player enjoy it more. But if you limit the player to use a weapon that is overpowered, then he'll just use it forever. In Metal Gear Solid, the silencer, silenced pistol is the weapon he everyone uses because it's the most efficient one. Just kill everything silently. In Overwatch, for example, the sniper gun is not overpowered, but it can be overpowered if the developers decide to make it, fast, or the reload time is fast, etc. Yeah, so this would let dominant gameplay. This is just an example, but would usually let the player not come back. Long tutorials. Oh my god! If you don't put a skip button on a tutorial, then people would feel not they don't want to play it again because they don't want to do the tutorial again. But if you can do the tutorial and you can skip it, if you want to play again, then the player will be like, okay, it's not a problem. So long tutorials, unskippable long tutorials, are will let players not play it again. Yeah, the next question. So the sniper in the middle, it is from Overwatch, the game. I want to know the name of the character in the picture from Overwatch. The name of the character from Overwatch. Um, what's the name of the character? So Shog got it. Congrats. Yes, it is Anna from Overwatch. I might have confused you because this is a reskin of Anna. But yeah, that's the right answer. Good job. Let's move on. Project Z. Awesome. Myself and Haytham are working on Project Z for Game Dev to showcase game development processes. Um, well, last week, so I'll talk about the updates. We added a player system, which includes the player health um, and the camera system of the player. So that was added. The next one is combat animations. He showed you last week, or the last stream that he did. Inventory system that he added also, and a mini map that he likes, also added. Level design got updated, and I'll show you a few slides on how we, let's say, updated the level design. So this is the player system, the health bar on top, the mini map. So this is work in progress, obviously, but this is the world that Haytham created in collaboration with me. Combat system, يعني the combat animations. Next, inshallah, we'll see enemies and we can start killing them basically. The UI system, which included the inventory, the mini map, showcased in his live stream, the last live stream that he did. And next, he said, and there is a surprise for the next live stream that he's going to do. But what kind of new system that he will add, I'm going to keep it as a surprise. But a hint is horses. So what will he do with horses? Inshallah, we'll see in his next live stream. Yeah, can't wait. So the level design quick sketch that we had last time when I had my last live stream, and we talked about level design for Project Z. This is the way it looked from the beginning. Then we updated it a little bit more, added terrain, and in the sketch. It's just a sketch. It's not in the engine or anything. It's just a sketch. We added the layout, added a few environment objects. So this is the way it looked, and then we updated it even more based on the Haytham's new level, which looked now more detailed with more objects. So the map is getting upgraded more and more, and we'll populate it with more content as we move along. This is the updated map of Project Z, and hopefully inshallah we'll see it in the engine. I also did a few quest design for the first zone. I'm going to talk about this more in my next live stream, which is content design, including quests. So I'm not going to talk about it now. Maybe inshallah, not maybe, inshallah next week or the next live stream. Yeah, so more Project Z updates coming soon. Hopefully, if you tune back in next time, I'll show you new updates. The next scheduled live stream is on Monday, inshallah, which includes Haytham. He's going to talk about level design and animation in Project Z. And on Tuesday, inshallah, Ahmed Bastagi is back. So thank you for attending Stream Game Dev. It was awesome. Sorry about the lag. I didn't mention it because I didn't want, didn't want to talk about it, basically. So sorry about that, but inshallah we're going to resolve it for next time. It was awesome. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking. And this is Extreme Game Dev. Oh, yeah, I didn't mention the winner. Basically, I think it is JMO with 3 points, and I'll get the Extreme Game Dev team to contact JMO, and we'll get you the reward as soon as possible. Congrats.